Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, a look at what a Russian invasion of Ukraine might mean for U.S. forces. How likely are the two superpowers to come in a conflict? We talk to the experts. And directed energy, laser beams, people, is always an interesting topic. Find out what the Navy and Air Force are working on. Finally, our team of editors takes a look back at some of the biggest stories of the year. We'll look at what made 2021 memorable in military news. With the latest news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, this is Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. With Russian military forces massing on the Ukrainian border and intelligence sources warning an invasion might be imminent, more conflict in the former Soviet country may be on the way. For more on what the move by the Kremlin might mean for the American military, we go to reporter James Webb.
James, welcome to the show. Russia's building up on the Ukrainian border. What kind of buildup are we seeing?
So in the past couple of months, we've seen there's claims of up to 100,000 Russian troops on the border between the Ukraine and Russia. Mixed in there is there are airborne troops the Russians have, an increasing number of intelligence assets, a buildup of logistical capabilities, and heavy artillery. There are indications that this force structure could be used in an offensive type of operation into the Ukraine, and that's kind of a major risk that President Biden and some of the Western world leaders are considering right now. Where that goes from there is anybody's guess. Ben Hodges, General Hodges, said that he doubts that the Russians have the logistical capability to launch an offensive anytime in the immediate future, but other sources are talking about the end of January being kind of when the Russians have that infrastructure in place to move forward into a place like Crimea. So any kind of imminent attack is probably not going to happen, but long term it presents a big problem for NATO and Europe.
When you talk to Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, who was the commander of the U.S. Army Europe, he said that the messaging is very different. Russia is very forceful, and the West not so much. President Biden talked to President Putin one day for I think 2 hours, and the next day said out loud that troops are off the table. That's something that caught General Hodges' ear.
The announcement that troops were absolutely not a possibility or a course of action being considered by the administration. I'm sure that troops were never going to be considered, but why would we say that? And so that also, again, is seen by the Kremlin as taking something off the table without them having done anything positive.
So already some would say that, the West has given Russia something without getting something in return. Is that something that President Putin is looking at?
I believe it is. The reality on the ground is that NATO does not have Ukraine as a member state. Article 5 does not apply to NATO at this point, or to Ukraine at this point in time. And by all accounts, there are only a couple hundred American troops located in the country, where they are under specific orders not to accompany the Ukrainians that they're training. They're on a very specific advise and assist mission. They cannot accompany those Ukrainians into combat should that happen.
Russian people, do they have an appetite for war?
It's hard to tell. According to General Hodges, a war which produced the body count would be something that would be pretty hard to palate for the Russian people themselves, particularly if it was an offensive war, shall we say, a war of aggression, a war of choice.
James, if Russia did attack, what would be their military objective?
Well, according to General Hodges and other experts that I spoke to on the matter, it looks like it would be twofold. Primarily, it would be to degrade and destroy any offensive military capability that they felt the Ukrainians had built up. So, in effect, they would attempt to instantaneously destroy the Ukrainian military in place. There's a very static front line that's been there since 2014. They know where the Ukrainians are located. They know where their fire systems are located. They would target those first and eliminate their military capability. The second part, or the second objective, would be geographic, and it'd be very limited. They would stick to the Donbass area. They would stick to the areas which are already, locked in conflict. And according to General Hodges, we'd be very unlikely to see the Russians roll all the way to, say, Kiev. And there's almost no chance of them attempting to occupy all of the Ukraine and sort of incorporate it Soviet style back into Russia.
If the Russians do expand the kinetic operations, that we would most likely see something coming out of Crimea, where they've got a very significant bastion for launching air power, but also for logistics. And the operational objective would be to isolate Ukraine from the Black Sea.
The political objective at the end of the day would be to show the West that the Ukraine is a failed state and is not worthy of admission into NATO or further Western involvement.
What kind of support does Russia have within Ukraine's borders?
In some of the provinces, particularly Donbass, there is an incredibly high number of ethnic Russians. And one of the more provocative pieces of rhetoric coming out of the Kremlin is, them talking about Russian genocide. It has a certain tinge to it that we've seen historically. And when you start speaking, in terms of ethnic war, it creates a very volatile scenario and a very broad set of justifications.
Well, we'll see what happens. James, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks, James. In lighter news, Lieutenant Dan, a favorite in military and veterans communities, is a lot more than just a musician. Through his foundation, actor Gary Sinise also does work for wounded service members. Check out a little of one of his latest efforts.
It's a dangerous business, defending our country.
I was in Afghanistan at that point, about 3 months. Along the way, we were crossing an open field area, and as I'm running across, I heard the bang.
It's hard to imagine a person surviving that.
I was 18 when I decided I was going to go to the Marine Corps, straight out of high school. Initially, I was actually a finance clerk. I was like, I can't see myself doing this for the rest of my career in the Marine Corps. I'm going to get out. That's when I saw EOD had opened up. 2011 was my second trip over there. We were working out of an area in Sangin. We were attached to a infantry unit, and we were coming back from a raid, and we were all dismounted. Walking back, we were crossing an open field area, and I was the fourth guy crossing the field, following the same route the other three guys had taken. And as I'm running across, step in the right spot, I guess, I heard the bang. And everything went black. And then I came to right before I hit the ground, and I broke my hands. I broke my fall that way.
Hey, you hear me? Are you breathing?
Laying there for a few seconds, and I'm looking at my hands, and I'm looking at my gloves, and smoke's coming out of the holes. And I was like, well, that can't be good. I did kind of a self-assessment, because I still had no idea how bad it was. And I remember just checking under the sheets, going, okay, well, that leg's gone. And well, that leg's mostly gone. At the time, I was one of the most traumatically injured guys to have received those injuries and survive.
They talked about him taking a long time to recover and that he was going to be needing help. That's when I effectively recognized that I was going to be his caregiver. Gary had come down to San Diego to meet a lot of folks, and through a couple of visits that we'd had, the topic of smart home had come up and that they were interested in maybe building one for Jason.
One of the things we do is build these specially adapted smart technology homes for very badly wounded folks that might not be able to do that for themselves. We wanted to support Jason in his recovery and moving forward and to take the stress away. They've earned it. They deserve it. They've given a lot for their country, and so we want to give something back. I asked Jason if he would like us to do a home for him.
When I found out that they were going to be building a home, I was like, awesome, this is going to be great. I'm going to get the house that will work for me.
The houses really make a difference because we have a tremendous team of builders that now they've done so many houses with our wounded that they know just how to do it.
Just the fact that this is now my home. It's been built to help make my life easier.
The whole thing is to restore independence, not only for the service member, but for the caregivers.
The benefit to me and my wife is the fact to know that our own place, we're right attached to the building to be there for him.
With the Gary Sinise Foundation, everything is set up very specifically for whatever your injury is. Hallways were a pain for me. Hallways are like this. I'm going to make sure that there's not going to be a whole lot of hallways and they're going to be wide. Needed to make sure that the bathrooms, I could get in there easy, plenty of space for me to be able to turn around, move around, as well as have a shower that was customized for me to use. Kitchen, I kind of took the middle ground. Well, my mom and dad live here too, and I don't want them, having to bend way down. The counters are lower, but it's convenient for both parties, if you will. There's just that weight that just kind of just comes off, and that gratitude that you have towards everyone involved is kind of hard to put into words.
He has inspired me, he has motivated me, and people like Jason are the reason I started the Gary Sinise Foundation. I just want them to have a happy life going forward and to know that their service meant something.
When we come back, laser beams. Miltech's Todd South digs into some directed energy projects on the horizon. Welcome back. For years, the various military branches have been interested in developing directed energy tech for various possible uses. While recently adopted for counter-drone operations, a couple of the branches are also looking to expand laser capabilities in new ways. Reporter Todd South has more in this week's Miltech.
So directed energy, basically laser beams. All the services are interested in them. They've been interested in them for decades, going back before the technology was even available. In the most recent years, we've seen a lot of directed energy or laser projects geared at counter-drone options. The Army was equipping 5 kilowatt, 10 kilowatt and larger and higher, more powerful lasers on Stryker combat vehicles for testing in Europe and of course here in the continental United States. The Air Force did a 2018 counter-drone laser rodeo in White Sands missile range where they tried a whole bunch of different options from vehicle to stationary mounted lasers to take out drones. That's pretty well known, but there's some new projects coming up that are quite interesting for the Navy and the Air Force that are pretty big. First one up is Thor, not the mythical Norse god of thunder nor the Marvel Avenger character, but actually the tactical high-powered operational responder. It's a prototype piece of equipment from the Air Force Research Laboratory that is essentially geared toward hitting multiple targets, sometimes simultaneously. That item is a laser essentially that would hit all kinds of drones, different ranges, different powers, different altitudes. It's obviously a prototype, so it's going to take a little while to get it off the ground, but it could help solve that big drone swarm problem that a lot of strategists seem to be concerned with. The next one's another Air Force project, pretty interesting, pretty sci-fi, and I'm not going to rely on memory here, I'm going to read the acronym itself. It is the Space Solar Powered Incremental Development and Research Project, or SPIDER. They have a sub-project I'm not even going to try to spell out called Arachne. You get the theme. But essentially what it does is it takes solar power, 2 satellites that are going to collect that energy and then beam that energy through RF frequency to a forward operating base that will then collect it, transfer it back into power. So instead of having generators, convoys, and all the fuel that you would need for that, you literally are getting your energy from the sun through a satellite. The next one is from the Navy. It is the Directed Energy Systems Integration Lab. Now the lab broke ground earlier this year and is scheduled to open in December. It's essentially a lab built entirely around figuring out how to put lasers on ships, whether that's to hit drones, use weapons against other ships, maybe lasers for communications. There's all kinds of options. And this lab is actually going to have about a 36,000 square mile range for testing, and it's going to be testing all these different ideas, all these different concepts for the Navy. So the Air Force is looking at space, Air Force is looking at counter-drone, the other services are doing the same, mounting stuff on vehicles. So the technology is finally catching up with the science fiction, and there's options now for lasers across the military services. So a lot of them still in prototype phase, but we'll see what's going to happen. This has been Todd South of Military Times.
When we come back, it's your latest financial tips in this week's Money Minute. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack gives her latest tips.
It's no secret the VA loan is one of the best mortgage options for vets and active duty. But why? And are there other options for military families beyond VA loans? Well, first and foremost, the VA loan is an excellent choice because it comes with advantages available only to service members and vets. It's made for you, and it's more affordable and easier to qualify for with no down payment, lower interest rates, and exceptions for lower credit scores. So what are the requirements? Generally, if you're active duty, a veteran, retired military, or the surviving spouse of a service member, you qualify. But to be sure, you can check va.gov. And yes, there are other types of loans available to anyone that help make mortgages more affordable, like the Federal Housing Administration Loan, or FHA. FHA loans are popular with vets buying their first home because they allow for a down payment as low as 3.5%. There's also the USDA loan, with no money down on your mortgage, but they apply only to homes in rural and suburban areas, and credit scores lower than 640 are accepted only on a case-by-case basis. Overall, vets have many options for financing a home. The best one for you may take a little research and a helping hand. So talk to a trusted lender for guidance and to get every available benefit you and your family deserve for your new home.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more of our coverage, be sure to head on over to Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps Times.com and DefenseNews.com for the latest stories. And for a rapid-fire list of headlines in your inbox each weekday, subscribe to the Early Bird Brief. And make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And when we come back, the Military Times crew of editors looks back on 2021. And just like that, there goes 2021. Another big year of stories has gone by, and here to break down the top headlines of the past 12 months is the Military Times crew of editors. Take a look at what they think will stand out from the past year.
Welcome back to the Military Times Reporters Roundtable, where we bring you the inside stories behind the week's biggest headlines. I'm Leo Shane, Capitol Hill Bureau Chief from Military Times, and with me in studio for the first time are Megan Myers, our Pentagon Bureau Chief, and Howard Altman, our Senior Managing Editor. It is wonderful to see you guys in person.
Thank you for having us.
I know.
Great to see you guys.
We gotta do this more often. We gotta come
Absolutely.
together. So this is our final roundtable for 2021. So I wanted to look back at some of the biggest news stories of the year and take a few minutes to discuss how much is still left unfinished from them. And the top one for the military community is Afghanistan, the official end of the war, the withdrawal of all the U.S. troops from that country. In the chaotic final days of the American military presence there, we saw the fall of the Afghan security forces and the democratic government. We saw tens of thousands of refugees overwhelm the Kabul airport, and we saw 13 U.S. service members killed by a suicide bomber in what would become the final American casualties of the war. So let's start there. Howard, we're still not really done with this war yet, even though everybody's out, right?
Well, there are two issues to consider. The first is the ongoing effort to fight counterterrorism there, which is going to be very difficult now that there's no U.S. presence there. And is the joint attack on August 29th in Kabul that killed 10 civilians just shows how difficult that is. The other issue is the ongoing disaster for the tens of thousands of Afghan allies who are left behind. Just this morning, I was having a conversation with one of the relief effort leaders, and they're just frustrated. They don't know what to do. People are starving. I talked to somebody, a former interpreter over there, that's he's worried about how he's going to feed his family. It's a disaster.
Yeah. Megan, I feel like this was the only story we were hearing in the Pentagon press conferences for a while, and now I feel like it's really faded back, even though there's still all these issues. I mean, is the Pentagon just ignoring this and hoping it'll go away at this point?
Well, the problem is that at this point it's largely, if you want to ask questions about what's going on in Afghanistan or the refugees that have already come here, those are State Department questions, those are Homeland Security questions. One of the final things that the Pentagon, one of the loose ends that they're trying to tie up is these condolence payments to the families of the victims of that attack on August 29th. And that has proved to be a little bit of a logistic issue for them. But otherwise, the Pentagon's like, we are, trying to have as much intelligence on the ground as possible. It's difficult. We are hoping to launch strikes at some point, but it's kind of, not their show anymore now that we don't have troops.
Okay. Well, let's shift from the violence in Afghanistan to the violence on Capitol Hill this year. On January 6, hundreds of supporters of then-President Donald Trump stormed the Capitol building in an attempt to block the certification of Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 presidential election. This became a major military story because of the deployment of tens of thousands of National Guard troops to D.C. in the aftermath of the attack, and because of the revelations that a number of the individuals involved were veterans or affiliated with military units. So, Howard, between the ongoing Guard deployments for COVID and storm missions and everything else, it's been a really busy year for the Guard.
It's been an extremely busy year. There's 440,000 some Guard troops, Air Force, and Army. They're in Kentucky. They've responded to the tornado, responded to COVID, responded to the civil unrest. There's about 150 Florida National Guard troops right now in Ukraine with Task Force Gator. So it's going to continue to be a very busy time for them.
And I know Congress has really looked into ways to expand some benefits to try and treat them, but we're still looking at very different benefit systems, very different support systems for the Guard and the active duty forces.
Well, it depends on how you're activated, but for many Guard troops, it's an imbalance in terms of the benefits that they get, and I think there's an effort underway to change that.
Megan, let's talk about the extremism angle here, because you've covered that a lot this year. What's happened with the Pentagon, and where do we stand now with sort of this review of whether or not there are extremists, white supremacists in the ranks?
So immediately following January 6th, the questions for the Pentagon are, okay, you have all these extremists. Do you know about them? Have you investigated any of them, prosecuted any of them? And the answers really were, we're not sure. The services kind of take care of that by themselves, and a lot of those cases get referred to the FBI, and so the military doesn't have a lot of visibility on what's going on. So the Pentagon stood up a working group basically to start looking into more of this. There was a military DoD-wide stand-down. Everybody came together and talked about the issues and why it's not okay and what you can do to report these sorts of things. The working group had a progress report due in July. The understanding is that it was finished sometime later in the fall, and that the Secretary has seen it, but they have not briefed that publicly.
The Pentagon's late with a report? I'm shocked.
They missed the deadline,
this is my
man.
shocked face. So, look, one more big topic to discuss today, and that's the issue of sexual misconduct in the ranks. This has been a major problem for years. Megan, you've been covering this extensively this year, too. So talk about the changes that we've seen in 2021.
So there's been kind of as you know, this bilateral effort from Congress and then from the Pentagon to address some of these issues. They were on the same page largely this year when the Pentagon, after having its own independent commission, concluded, yes, we want to take the prosecution of these cases out of the chain of command, including and add in their sexual assault, domestic violence, some related charges. And so now the question is, how are they going to do it? They need Congress to help them change the law to do that. But then there are also dozens of other recommendations that came out of this commission that the Pentagon has kind of given itself a roadmap to implement, but they have the better part of a decade to implement some of these things. So when we see changes is really very up in the air because, as you mentioned, there's this roadmap, but it doesn't have a ton of deadlines, and maybe they'll miss some.
We did see in the recently passed National Defense Authorization Act some of those changes. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand has been talking about this for years. Not all of them went in. Howard, they're moving ahead, so this will all be fixed soon, right?
Oh, absolutely. No worries about that at all.
We'll keep tracking it. One last item before I let you two go today. Back in July, I asked each of you to use your in-depth military knowledge and your investigative reporting skills to predict the winner of the Army-Navy football game. Megan, you said the Navy would get it. Congratulations. Howard, Would you like to apologize to our viewers for misleading them?
I went with my heart. My dad was in the Army, so I stand by that even though
But
I was
as a
wrong.
reporter, I feel like you're held to a higher standard when you make predictions like this 5 months out, too.
Yes, that's why you never ask reporters 5 months out to make a prediction on Army, Navy.
Listen, thanks to both of you for coming here today. It was great to see you. We should do this more often. We should come together here. Thank you to our viewers for tuning in. You can follow all of our coverage on these issues in coming weeks at militarytimes.com. We'll see you next time.
And that's all we have time for this week. Please visit us on militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more coverage. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.